Hello and welcome. In this set of materials, we'll start off by trying to define and trying to get our hands on what economics is as a subject. Economics provides insight into the functioning of marketplaces by examining firms and consumers within markets, and also the influence of a firm's profitability. Additionally, economics examines how governments seek to deliver economic growth. These and other concepts will be introduced to you as we proceed over the sessions. And with this in mind, the learning outcomes for this module aims to address the following. Firstly, describe the relevance of economic principles to resource allocation and decision-making process within the business context. Secondly, apply basic economic principles and techniques of the market system and the competitive process. Thirdly, our discussions will also aim to demonstrate an awareness of the issues surrounding corporate governance at firm, government, and supranational level. And lastly, we will draw attention to the main features of the international economic environment and the basic causes and consequences of globalization on UK firms. Interestingly, the module schedule is organized into 4 key themes. The key themes of business and economics, business and markets, government and business in the international economy. The teaching format for this module is very practical and blended, as lectures are purely digital. And this will be centered on a digital lecture, weekly self-assessment quizzes, group sessions involving tasks, and also group discussions to test our knowledge. With regards to the assessment, this includes 3 key elements. The first is an online multiple choice assignment, which is worth 20% of your final mark, and it's due on the 6th week. The second assessment is an online multiple choice assessment worth 20% of your final mark, and while the final assessment is a business report worth 60% of the final mark, and this is due in week 12. Now, this report is a 2,000-word report, and it's focused on globalization and what are the drivers of globalization. Each element must be completed, and the pass mark is 40% of the module, for the module. The recommended reading is Economics for Business by David Berg and Damian Ward. There's a 5th edition, and you get this almost everywhere, anyway. And this is also in addition to other useful references that can actually be found on the learning site. So let's get to work. Let's do some work today. So what is economics? I would say economics is a social science that studies the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. Economics focuses on the behavior and interactions of economic agents and how economies work. An economist analysis of business begins with a simple assumption that firms are in business to make profits for their owners. And the assumption that firms are profit maximizers or make the highest amount of profit is a very clear simplification. Interestingly, economics is also the study of how the society allocates its scarce resources among the various competing ones. Societies are seen to have unlimited ones, but limited resources. And thus we have a problem, and that's a problem of scarcity. We would find out in our textbooks, especially the recommended readings, that they always start off talking about fundamental concepts such as scarcity of resources in relation to a society's wants. Then the fundamental basic problem facing all societies leads to talk about economics as a study of resource allocation. So let's put our thinking caps on. Think about everything you would like to own: a big house, a luxury car, a top-of-the-range smartphone, designer shoes, and let's say a holiday in an exotic location. Now think about the resources that might contribute to paying for these desirable items. For instance, the proceeds from your wages or your salary. you would be quick to note that your wish list is significantly longer than your resources list. And this means we have a problem. And the problem in economics is one which recognizes the differences between infinite wants and finite wants. Economics is also interested in allocating land, labor, capital, and enterprise in order to achieve the society's wants. And economists group land, labor, capital, and enterprise as factors of production. Don't forget that. So factors of production are the resources needed to make goods and services. For instance, land is where raw materials such as oil, gas, base, metals, and other minerals come from. For instance, countries like Saudi Arabia and Nigeria have enormous oil. Labor, on the other hand, refers to the ability to work. For instance, countries like India and China have workforces that runs into hundreds of millions. Capital refers to goods used to produce other goods and resources. For example, think of the machinery used for the production, and also computers used at businesses, and maybe technology used in your workplaces and other places. Finally, enterprise is human resources that combines resources to produce new goods and services and bring them to the market. And lastly, an entrepreneur combines land, labor, and capital together, taking risks on the way. Interestingly, entrepreneurs are able to spot opportunities and are perceived to be risk takers. So think about all the entrepreneurs you know, and what common characteristics do they possess? Richard Branson, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and myself. I'm an entrepreneur. So this set of concepts will introduce us to economic models. And in economics, economists think about the world in models because they recognize that the world is an extremely complicated place. And with this in mind, they use models to simplify assumptions. The truth is, in simplifying the world, economics try to provide a better understanding of what is actually going on because models are predictive in nature. Now, the first of these economic models that I would come across is the production possibility curve. And the production possibility curve shows the maximum number of goods that can be produced by an economy with a given amount of resources. It shows the maximum amount of food and clothing that can be produced with a fixed amount of resources in the slide behind us. And in particular, it reveals the maximum possible output combinations of two goods or services that an economy can achieve when all resources are fully and efficiently employed. So in plain terms, this means getting more of food means giving up more on clothing. So an example of the production possibility curve with illustrated points marked is given behind. And with the production possibility curve, a trade-off is usually considered for an economy. But this not only applies to the economy as a whole, but can also be applied to individuals, households, and economic organizations. So in summary, one good can only be produced by diverting resources from other goods, and so by producing less of them. So pay close attention to how the production possibility curve utilizes concepts such as trade-offs, efficiency, and opportunity cost, all captured in the diagram to show the kind of choices that are open to the society. And this very quickly brings us to the element of choice and opportunity costs. It is worthwhile revising these concepts and having a good understanding of them. So with regards to opportunity costs, let's put our thinking caps up again, right? Imagine you've got £50 and you're split between buying a lovely mustard jacket from Zara or having a nice dinner at one of my favorite restaurants, Chapo Raya. So if you decide to go for the mustard jacket, the dinner from Chapo Raya becomes the foregone benefits you could have received. and this is known as the opportunity cost. On the other hand, if you decide to go for the dinner, the zero jacket becomes the alternative forgone. Hence, the opportunity cost consists of benefits that one could have received. In sum, it is defined as the best alternative forgone. Can you think of any other examples? Yeah, that's fine. So let's proceed to look at types of economic systems that we can use to make our choices about what we produce, how we produce it, and who gets what. And you will see that there are types of economic resources that are used all around the world to make these decisions. In particular, there are two main economic systems, the planned and market economies. A planned economy is an economy where the government decides how resources are allocated to the production of particular products. A feature of the planned economy includes public ownership of the means of production. In planned economies, cooperation and social good is a motivating force. Planned economies are governed by central planning, while distribution of goods and services are according to need. On the other hand, market economies are economies where private individuals own a majority of the economic factors of production. Market economies have two main important groups: the consumers that buy the products and those that sell the products. And the features of market economies include private ownership of the means of production. Here, self-interest is seen as a motivating force, while exchange is governed by the invisible hand of demand and supply. Countries like France, the UK, the USA are examples of market economies, while Cuba and North Korea fall under the brackets of planned economies. So let's proceed one more step. Accordingly, and more importantly, economics is divided into two main branches, and you have to know this. One is microeconomics, and secondly, macroeconomics. Micro, which means small, is the study of how individuals make economic decisions in an economy. Rather than looking at the economy as a whole, microeconomics attempts to understand why consumers prefer particular products. It examines what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. It is concerned with the individual and the firm. On the other hand, macroeconomics studies how the entire economy works. It aims to address issues such as unemployment, inflation, recession, economic growth, balance of trade deficits, and of course, the impact of Brexit. In sum, microeconomics is focused on individual and firm prices and markets, market failures, while macroeconomics is concerned with objectives, government policies, issues around inflation, unemployment, and international economic issues. So let's move to another model. And another economic model deals with a very interesting model in economics called the circular flow of income. And the circular flow of income provides a good introduction to the economy as a whole, where we take two main sectors in the economy and look at the relationship between them. Then we begin to understand how these sectors are interdependent on one another. The circular flow of income shows the flow of outputs and payments between the households and firms within an economy. And within this model, households are assumed to own the factors of production, which, if you may recall, are land, labor, capital, and enterprise. So since firms produce goods, they will require the factors of production owned by households. This means that they will be ready to pay or provide household with financial rewards for using the factors of production. So for instance, the reward for labor is wages. Interestingly, the household uses the money or the wages earned from the firms to buy finished goods and services, and thus they return the cash back to the firms. In economics, we say a circular flow of income is assumed to have taken place. So if we take a look at the diagram, the inner loop captures the flow between the household and the firms. That is the flow of labor to firms and the flow of goods and services from the firms back to the household. While the outer loop captures the financial flow between both sectors. Here, firms pay household wages for labor, and household use their wages or income to buy goods and services from the firm. Accordingly, let's take a widened approach in our understanding of the circular flow to examine instances of savings by households and investments by firms. In understanding this, we'll bring these discussions to bear to understand the key concept of leakages and injections. So, households don't spend all their income on goods and services because they save a portion of it. And because income is taken from the circular flow and saved, this represents a leakage. Subsequently, if the money is saved in the bank, banks tend to lend these monies out to make profits. The borrowers are usually firms who aim to invest the funds in items such as investments, such as equipment. These investments are seen as spending within an economy, and this does not emerge from the income earned by the households. Thus, it is referred to as an investment. Now, accordingly, the government collects taxes from the earnings of firms and households. Taxes are seen as leakages from the circular flow as they limit the ability of the household's spending power. On the other hand, government also injects financial resources into the economy by building schools and buying hospitals and paying social benefits to the needy. And these are seen as forms of injections. And finally, households may consume goods made in other countries. For instance, one may decide to import a Mercedes-Benz, which is a German car. And this represents a leakage from the UK's circular flow of income. While on the other hand, an investment occurs when a German buys a British car. And when a German buys a British car, this represents an export. So I think overall, you're expected to use these economic models and understanding of these concepts to provide for richer insights into what we've spoken about today.